The night air in Cleveland was thick with rain, the kind that smelled like metal and electricity, like the world was bleeding beneath the storm. Blue and red lights pulsed against the cracked brick walls of a quiet suburban street, slicing through the fog in sharp, rhythmic flashes. Detective Samuel Sam Harlan stepped out of his unmarked sedan, the creak of his door drowned by the low murmur of radios and the soft squelch of boots in wet grass. He'd seen plenty of horrors in 15 years on the force, overdoses, suicides, gang hits, but nothing prepared him for what waited inside the Kettering house. The front door hung crooked, its frame splintered where it had been kicked in. Shards of glass covered the entryway like scattered diamonds. A picture frame lay face down on the floor, its cracked glass cutting through the smiling faces of a family that no longer existed. Adam and Claire Kettering and their 2 children. Sam's flashlight beam drifted over the hallway walls, catching streaks of red where someone's hand had slid down in panic. His stomach turned. The house was quiet now, too quiet. Only the faint hum of the ceiling fan remained, spinning lazily over death. In the living room, the chaos came into focus. Adam Kettering, a well-respected builder in the city, lay sprawled across the carpet, his head resting against the leg of a toppled coffee table. Blood had soaked deep into the fibers beneath him, spreading like ink. Claire's body was nearby, near the base of the stairs, one arm reaching out toward the door, her nails torn and broken. Their teenage son Luke slumped beside the couch, eyes wide, mouth slightly open as if still trying to scream. Sam exhaled slowly, jaw tightening. 3 bodies, no sign of forced robbery, no valuables missing. Whoever did this wasn't after money. They came for something else, and then a sound, soft, barely there. He turned toward the hallway, hand instinctively moving to the gun at his side. It wasn't footsteps, it was trembling. A quiet, fragile whimper, like a trapped animal hiding in the dark. Following it upstairs, he pushed open the master bedroom door. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of blood and rain-soaked wood. His flashlight swept across the bed, the walls, the dresser, and then down. A small shape under the bedskirt. Sam knelt slowly. "Hey," he whispered, voice low and steady. "It's okay. You're safe now." A pair of wide, vacant eyes stared back at him. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, her blonde hair matted with someone else's blood. Her hands clutched a stuffed dog so tightly its seams had burst. "Sophie," Sam breathed. He recognized her from the family photo on the wall. Sophie Kettering. But she didn't move, didn't cry, didn't even blink. He reached out gently, palm up. She flinched at first, then slowly crawled out. Her face was ghost pale, her small body trembling. Sam lifted her into his arms, her stuffed toy still pressed against her chest. "You're okay," he said, though the words felt hollow. She didn't answer. She didn't speak at all. By dawn, the house was sealed off, and Sophie was wrapped in a blanket at the edge of an ambulance, her blank stare fixed on the flashing lights. Sam stood beside her, soaked to the bone, replaying the scene in his mind over and over. 3 bodies, 1 survivor, no leads. That night replayed in his head for weeks. The press called it the Maplewood Massacre. The city called it tragic. But for Sam, it was personal. He couldn't stop seeing the little girl's eyes, empty, as if she'd watched something far beyond human comprehension. The investigation stretched on, relentless and fruitless. Forensics combed the house, scraped for DNA, checked for forced entry. Nothing fit. Adam had no enemies, no debts, no secret affairs. Claire's phone records were clean. Luke's schoolmates knew nothing. Every thread Sam pulled turned to dust. Until, slowly, the case file thickened with reports but thinned in hope. Months passed, then a year. Eventually, the Kettering murders went cold. Another box on a shelf, another ghost in Sam's memory. But Sophie? She wasn't just a name on paper. He saw her again a few weeks later in the waiting area at Child Protective Services. Tiny, knees pulled up to her chest, tracing invisible shapes on the armrest of her chair. She hadn't spoken a word to anyone. Not to the doctors, not to the social worker, not even to him. The caseworker sighed when Sam asked about her. "No family left. No one's come forward. She'll go into foster care soon." Sam stared through the glass at her small frame, at the stuffed dog still clutched to her side. He knew what that meant. The system would swallow her whole. She'd bounce from home to home, lost in the cracks, another statistic born from someone else's cruelty. "I'll take her," he said before he could stop himself. The caseworker blinked. "Detective Harlan, that's not—" "I said I'll take her," Sam repeated. "I'll apply for guardianship." It wasn't easy. Background checks, interviews, psychological evaluations. A single middle-aged detective wasn't exactly the department's idea of a perfect candidate. But eventually, after months of paperwork and persistence, Sophie moved into his small townhouse on the edge of the city. At first, she barely existed there. She drifted from room to room like a shadow, her silence filling the spaces where laughter should have been. She ate little, slept less, and when she did sleep, she screamed. Sam didn't push her. He'd seen trauma up close, knew that healing wasn't something you could force, so he gave her space. He learned her quiet patterns, how she froze when glass broke, how she kept her back to the wall when people got too close, how she sat by the window when it rained, staring out like she was searching for something in the storm. He told himself that silence was progress, that if she wasn't talking, at least she wasn't hurting herself. And for a while, that lie worked. 10 years passed. The world moved on. The case gathered dust. Sophie grew from a fragile, terrified child into a quiet, intelligent teenager. She still didn't speak, but she had a way of looking at people that made words feel unnecessary. Sam had long since retired from the force, but he couldn't let go of that one unsolved case. Every night after Sophie went to bed, he'd sit at his kitchen table surrounded by stacks of files, autopsy reports, crime scene photos, interview notes, reading them again and again until the words blurred. He wasn't sure what he was hoping to find anymore. Maybe closure, maybe redemption. But one thing he knew for certain, somewhere out there, the person who destroyed Sophie's life was still breathing. And he couldn't live peacefully until he found them. It was a rainy Thursday when Sam decided to do something different. He brought home a wooden box filled with brushes, pencils, and paint. He placed it in front of Sophie, who sat reading at the dining table. "For you," he said softly. She looked up briefly, expression unreadable, then back to her book. He smiled anyway. "You don't have to talk to say what's inside." She didn't answer. Weeks passed, and the box gathered dust in the corner of her room, untouched. Sam tried not to be disappointed. Healing couldn't be rushed. Sophie was sitting on the floor, cross-legged, brush in hand. For the first time in 10 years, she was painting. Sam stood in the doorway, barely breathing, afraid even the sound of his heartbeat might shatter the fragile moment unfolding in front of him. Sophie sat on the floor, hunched over a sheet of paper spread across the rug. Her brush moved quickly, furiously, strokes of dark color bleeding into one another like bruises. At first, he thought she was painting shapes. But the more he looked, the more he realized it wasn't art. It was emotion, rage, grief, confusion, all colliding in messy, jagged spirals. A storm on paper. He watched in silence until her arm began to tremble. When she finally noticed him standing there, she froze. Her brush hovered midair, her face pale, almost frightened. Sam raised his hands gently, as though trying not to spook a wild animal. "It's beautiful," he said softly. She didn't speak, didn't even blink, but she didn't stop him from stepping closer. That was enough. From that night on, something changed. Every evening after school, Sophie painted. Sometimes she used pencils, sometimes just her fingers, anything that could give shape to the chaos that lived inside her. Her walls soon became a gallery of pain and silence, swirling black storms, streaks of red and gray, shapes that looked like broken wings, faces without features. Sam never commented beyond a simple, "That's good," or "You've got something powerful there." He didn't want to interpret it. He just wanted her to keep going, and she did. Until one night, as he collected her discarded sketches from the trash, something caught his eye. Among the chaos, the spirals, the lines, the splattered red, there was a pattern. A small, curved shape that appeared again and again in her paintings. Not identical, but deliberate. Always in the same spot. Always drawn with a different brush. It wasn't random. It was intentional. The next morning, Sam slid into a corner booth at the Beacon Diner with a folder under his arm. the smell of coffee and rain mixed in the air. He didn't look up when a familiar voice called out, "Still can't give up old ghosts, huh?" They'd been partners for nearly a decade before life, retirement, and bureaucracy had separated them. "This ghost never left," Sam muttered, opening the folder and sliding a few of Sophie's sketches across the table. Patrick raised a brow. "She drew these?" "She's been painting again. I think she's trying to tell me something." Patrick flipped through the papers, eyes scanning the shapes, the mess of color and motion. "Looks like art therapy to me," he said with a shrug. "Good for her." "No," Sam said quietly. "Look closer. See that curve? It's in all of them. Same angle, same placement." Patrick squinted, then sighed. "Sam, it's been 10 years. You've got to stop this. The case is dead. You did everything you could. Sophie deserves a life that's not defined by what happened." Sam's jaw clenched. "I'm not doing this for me." Patrick leaned back, sipping his coffee. "Maybe not, but sometimes obsession feels a lot like protection." Sam didn't answer. He just stared down at the papers. That curve haunted him. He knew he'd seen it before, somewhere deep inside those case files. He just couldn't place it. When Patrick finally left, Sam stayed behind, staring out the rain-streaked window until the waitress asked if he needed a refill. He didn't. He needed answers. That night, he spread Sophie's artwork across his kitchen table next to the old evidence photos. His small house felt smaller than ever, walls closing in around the ghosts that lived there. He flipped through each crime scene image, searching, comparing. The curve appeared again, not in the paintings, but in the shape of something from the night of the murders. A wound, a scar. He zoomed in on one of the photos with his phone. Near Adam Kettering's hand, something metallic, reflecting light. A small silver object. He grabbed the evidence log from the file. Item 17, silver cigarette case engraved with initials AK found near victim's body. He frowned. Adam Kettering didn't smoke. There had been no ashtrays, no lighters, no nicotine traces anywhere in the house. So why was there a cigarette case beside his body, and why had no one questioned it? A strange chill crept down Sam's spine. His pulse picked up. That tiny curved object, its reflection, its placement, it matched Sophie's shape. She wasn't just painting her pain. She was painting something she remembered. The following day, he sat in the office of Dr. Evelyn Harper, a child trauma psychologist he'd found after Sophie's drawings started shifting from abstract to hauntingly precise. Sophie sat in silence across from her, sketching idly in a notebook. Evelyn smiled at her. "You're very talented," she said gently. "I can see that drawing helps you think. That's good." Sophie didn't respond. She never did. But her pencil didn't stop moving. Over the next few weeks, the sessions continued. Sophie grew more comfortable, not talkative, but expressive. She began to hand Evelyn her drawings instead of keeping them hidden. When Evelyn finally showed them to Sam, one stood out. A house, black and hollow, surrounded by dead trees, and over it, an enormous, shifting shadow. Evelyn traced her finger along the darkness. "The shadow is recurring," she explained. "It represents what she fears most. It's not just memory. It's how her mind personifies the thing that hurt her." "You mean the killer," Sam said flatly. Evelyn nodded. Or rather, her mind's version of him. The way she sees the danger, constant, looming. It tells me Sophie doesn't believe she survived something. She believes she's still living inside it. Sam felt something cold twist in his stomach. She thinks it's still out there. Evelyn met his gaze. She doesn't just think it. She feels it. That's different. From that day on, Sam changed everything. He installed new locks, reinforced the windows. He started driving Sophie to school himself, checked every shadow in the house before he went to bed. He wasn't going to lose her. Not again, but the drawings didn't stop. The shadows kept growing, taking over entire sheets of paper, swallowing the light in every scene she painted. One night, Evelyn called him into her office after a session. "She wrote something today," Evelyn said, handing him the paper. The drawing was the same house, the same shadow. But this time, in jagged letters scrawled across the bottom, Sophie had written, "It's coming back." Sam stared at the words until his vision blurred. "This isn't just fear," Evelyn said quietly. "This is belief. Somewhere inside her, she knows something you don't." The words hit him harder than any bullet. He'd spent years trying to convince himself that the monster who murdered Sophie's family was gone, vanished into myth and failure. But if Evelyn was right, if Sophie's subconscious still felt its presence, then maybe it was never gone at all. Patrick began visiting again around that time. He said he was checking on Sam, on Sophie. He brought gifts, sketchbooks, movie tickets, art supplies, and made easy jokes that drew faint smiles from her. "She needs a normal life," he told Sam one afternoon, watching Sophie sketch from the porch. "Maybe you're keeping her too close to the past. She's 15, let her breathe a little." "She's processing," Sam said, his tone sharp. "Evelyn says this helps," Patrick smirked. "Or it keeps her stuck. What she needs is a reset, structure, new environment, a facility maybe. There's a great one out by Columbus." "No." Sam's voice cracked like thunder. Patrick raised his hands, chuckling. All right. Just saying, sometimes you've got to stop being her detective and start being her parent." Sam didn't reply, but something about Patrick's persistence felt wrong. Off. That night, Sam came home early from the grocery store to find Patrick sitting at the kitchen table with Sophie. They were flipping through her drawings, whispering. Sophie's face was pale, distant, her expression tight. When she saw Sam, she pushed her sketchbook closed and left the room. Patrick forced a smile. "Relax. We were just talking about her art." Sam nodded, but something deep in his gut stirred, an instinct honed by decades of reading people. Patrick wasn't just interested in Sophie's healing. He was curious. Too curious. And for the first time in 10 years, Sam wondered if the darkness Sophie kept painting wasn't just memory or fear, but recognition. Something in her knew. Something in him had missed it. That night, Sam reopened the cold case file. And when he saw that silver cigarette case again, engraved with the initials AK, something in his mind snapped into place. Because suddenly, he remembered. Patrick Doyle's middle name was Allen. For a long moment, Sam just sat there, frozen, staring at the faint engraved initials on the photograph. AK. He whispered the letters under his breath, like saying them aloud might change their meaning. But they didn't. They echoed. Allen. Patrick. Allen Doyle. The cigarette case had never made sense before. But now it fit too perfectly. Patrick had been there that night. Not officially, of course. He'd been off duty, working some supposed overtime case across town, but that had never been verified. The timing was vague, the reports messy. Sam had believed him because back then Patrick was more than a partner. He was family, and now he saw it all. The subtle manipulation. The way Patrick always tried to steer him away from reopening the case. The convenient push to send Sophie away, to a facility, where she couldn't talk, couldn't remember, couldn't accuse. Sam's pulse hammered in his ears. He grabbed his keys, raincoat and flashlight and left the house. The wind was sharp, slicing across the empty Cleveland streets. He drove without thinking, each red light flashing across his windshield like a heartbeat. He wasn't sure what he'd do when he got there. He just knew he needed to see Patrick. Patrick's house sat on a quiet cul-de-sac, the kind that looked normal until you realized normality was just an illusion. The lights were still on. Sam parked half a block away, killing his headlights. Through the window, he could see Patrick sitting at the kitchen table, a bottle of whiskey beside him, half empty. He looked older now, heavier, slower, but there was something in the way his hand gripped the glass that sent a chill through Sam's spine. He waited, watched. Then, finally, got out of the car. "Sam," he said, leaning against the frame. "It's late, you look like hell." "Maybe that's because I finally saw what I should have seen 10 years ago," Sam replied. Patrick's face didn't move, but his eyes flickered, just a fraction. "You're talking in riddles again. Come inside, will you? It's pouring." Sam stepped in. The air smelled like bourbon and dust. Files were scattered on the coffee table, not his own, but copies. Case files, from Maplewood. He scanned the table, pulse quickening. "You kept these," Sam said. "Why?" Patrick chuckled softly. Same reason you did, I imagine. Some things haunt you. Sam's voice dropped to a growl. Haunt or hide? Patrick poured another drink. You've been chasing ghosts for a decade, Sam. Maybe it's time to accept you didn't fail. Some things aren't meant to be solved. Sam reached into his coat pocket and tossed the photograph onto the counter. The silver cigarette case gleamed under the kitchen light. Except this one, Sam said. You dropped it, didn't you? That night. Patrick's smile faltered. For a long beat, the only sound was the rain beating against the windows. Then Patrick exhaled, slow, deliberate. You've been busy, he said finally. You killed them, Sam said quietly. The Ketterings. You murdered a family and left a 5-year-old girl under a bed. Patrick leaned against the counter, shaking his head. You really think that? After all these years? I know it. Patrick's expression changed. Not anger, not guilt, but something worse. Amusement. You know what the funny thing about truth is, Sam? It depends on who's telling it. Sam's hand moved toward his holster. Habit, instinct, but Patrick noticed. Don't, he warned. You don't want to make this ugly. It's already ugly, Sam said, voice low. She remembers you, Patrick. In her drawings, that curve, that shadow, that shape, she's been painting your face without knowing it. Patrick's eyes darkened. She doesn't know what she remembers. She was a child, half asleep, covered in blood. And yet she survived, Sam said. Something you didn't plan for. Patrick smirked. I didn't plan on you either. The air between them tightened like a coiled spring. For a moment, neither man moved. Then Patrick set his glass down, slow and careful, and said, You think you're the hero in this story, Sam. But you've always been the same, desperate for purpose, clinging to your badge like it meant redemption. I'm not looking for redemption, Sam said. Just justice. Patrick stepped closer. Justice? After 10 years? You'll ruin yourself chasing it. No one will believe you. You've got a retired cop's word and a traumatized girl's drawings. That's it. Sam's voice turned to steel. Then I'll make them believe. When Sam got back home, dawn was bleeding into the horizon. Sophie was awake, sitting by the window, sketchbook open on her lap. She looked up when he entered, her expression calm but wary. He knelt in front of her. Sophie, he said gently, I need to ask you something. It's important. She didn't move. The man who used to visit here, Patrick. Do you remember him? Her fingers tightened on the pencil. Sam waited. Then, slowly, she turned the sketchbook around. On the page was the same shadow she'd drawn for weeks. Tall, featureless, looming. But this time there was something new. A glint of silver in its hand. A curved shape. A cigarette case. Sam's heart stopped. She knew. Good, he whispered. You don't need to be afraid anymore. I'll take care of it. Sophie stared at him for a long moment. Then for the first time in years, she spoke, her voice hoarse, small but steady. He's coming back. It happened that night. Sam barely slept. He checked the locks, shut the curtains, loaded his gun. Around 2 a.m., the power flickered, once, twice, and the house went dark. He moved through the hall quietly, flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. The storm outside howled, lightning flashing through the window. A shadow moved by the porch. The door creaked. Sam's breath hitched. Patrick, he called, voice low. You don't have to do this. From the darkness, a familiar voice answered. You always were dramatic. Then glass shattered, the back window. Sam spun, aiming toward the sound. But before he could react, Patrick was there, stepping out of the darkness, gun drawn. You should have left it alone, Patrick said, his tone almost sad. You were a good man, Sam. You could have stayed that way. Sam's finger tightened on the trigger. You killed an entire family. Patrick tilted his head. And what do you think I'll do to keep that secret? Lightning flashed. The room exploded with white light. 2 gunshots, almost simultaneous. Then silence. When the world steadied, Sam was still standing. Patrick wasn't. He lay motionless on the floor, a dark pool spreading beneath him. His gun clattered from his hand, sliding across the tiles. "You don't get to haunt her anymore," he whispered. When the police arrived an hour later, the storm had passed. They ruled it self-defense. No charges. The past finally exhumed. But for Sam, closure was a myth. You don't close something like that. You just learn to breathe around it. Weeks later, as spring crept into the city, he and Sophie walked along the pier. The air smelled of salt and renewal. She carried her sketchbook under one arm. "You can draw again if you want," Sam said softly. She looked up at him, her eyes clearer than he'd ever seen them. "I don't need to," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "That's good." She hesitated. "Do you still have the case files?" He nodded. "Every page." "Then burn them," she said. "All of them.